ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਏਕਤਾ ਟੀਵੀ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸਾਂਝ। ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਹੋਸਟ ਕਮਲ ਔਜਲਾ। ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਨਮਸਤੇ, ਸਲਾਲੇਕਮ। ਅਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸਾਂਝ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਵਿਸ਼ਿਆਂ 'ਤੇ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ 21 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਨੂੰ, ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਣਾ ਸਕੋ। ਅਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਐਨੀ ਓਹਾਨਾ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਨੇ। ਇਹ ਫਲੀਟਵੁੱਡ ਪੋਰਟ ਕੈਲਸ ਤੋਂ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਨੇ NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ। ਅਤੇ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ। Miss Ohana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
You're welcome. So Miss Ohana, you are a school teacher. And being a school teacher, you know the problems that occur in youth. What are the steps your party, let's say your party wins, and what are the steps they will be taking to help these issues with gang violence and illegal drugs?
Yeah, I can hold it. Yeah. That's a great way to start the question off, right? Because absolutely, as a school teacher, everything in our society, whether it's economics, whatever, we see it in our students, right? In some way, shape, or form. So that's where a lot of my ideas evolved from. And you know, I teach at LA Matheson Secondary, very interesting area, and so you see like a microcosm of the world right there. Absolutely, sadly, we still see gang violence and all of that's associated with that illegal substance use still has a grasp in our society. So number one for me, the NDP platform has been very clear. You know, the Liberals kind of gave funding, but in fact, when you look into it, they didn't really give all the funding they needed to, and it wasn't targeted in the right direction in many ways. So we want to put at least $100 million concretely into youth programming. This means the world to me. I have youth programming. I've developed programs through a lens called Mentorship Through Identity that are being used in several schools now, where we want to bring positive decision making and pride in one's identity forward so that our kids are strong enough to say no to those outside, what I call predatory forces. So, but that's not the only thing. We have to do better with enforcement, especially with money laundering and different ways that gangs are using those processes. And of course, when it comes to giving teachers and families, most importantly families, the tools they need to have the conversations with their children. This includes mental health. This includes economic realities of you know, let's be honest, right? You can work a basic job and barely make ends meet, and that includes, you know, middle class, you know, working class people. Or, you know, what about that idea of like making fast money, right? So all these things are realities that we need to deal with. So the NDP is really thinking to put money into the hands of families and programming that will help us prevent. Because reaction, just by, I always say, listen to our police officers. They say we will not arrest our way out of the problem. So we don't want to criminalize our kids. We don't want to criminalize our families. We want to give them a step up so that they can just prevent ever from entering into that lifestyle.
True. Well said. Yeah, prevention is better than cure. We can be spending tons and tons of money on things that are already happening, but if we don't prevent them, there is no way we can actually clear that issue. So, and you also know that substance abuse and vaping are huge problems we are facing in schools these days. And what are the steps your party will be taking to help the school boards to eliminate this problem?
Yeah, I think it's going to take all levels of government, to be honest, right? Because it even goes down to the idea of licensing and how we do that. And then federal laws. So funny enough, and so yeah, vaping is a huge problem. Even as I'm on leave, I'm still getting emails from teachers and my own school, right, about what's been happening, who's vaping where, right? So it's really tough. But I've actually been speaking, this might sound weird, to some business owners who own vape shops. And it's been very interesting to learn from their side in terms of them wanting more enforcement. They want stricter legislation. So the idea of like not under 19. I met with some people that are suffering with cancer, that the nicotine addiction is so strong that vaping is the only solution there. So I have a 3 level of looking at it. Number one, it's not for youth. bottom line. So can we help, whether that is through some targeted federal funds to help school districts deal with that issue? Number two is we need to strengthen legislation around, controlling that substance. And there's a whole, spectrum of controlling those substances so that gas stations can't sell them, right? Like it's amazing where you can find these devices. It's accessible everywhere. So we need to toughen up on that. And I know we have like the business sector of vaping that's interested in that. And lastly, let's be honest, you talk about drug violence and gangs. There are large companies owned by cigarette manufacturers, right? Like Philip Morris, companies like Juuls and Vype are two of the big ones. They're out there targeting our kids. And that needs to stop. So that level where it's just glorified drug pushers, absolutely the federal government needs to step up and make sure that they have no right to advertise to our kids. So it's a multiple layered issue. At the end of the day, for those that truly need the devices because nicotine has ruined their lives, that's a different conversation. So we want nuanced policy that will strengthen the rules and make sure that our kids are not targeted when we know the deleterious effects it can have on their lungs and their growth.
And another issue, as we all know, we are facing is the climate change. What will your party do? What steps will your party take to help the environment?
You recall just 2 weeks ago now, the 115,000 youth just in Vancouver alone that marched and how powerful that was. I was there. We suspended our campaign for the day. As a school teacher, there's a lot of anxiety around that. So I always say to parents, like, your kids are showing me that they're anxious. They don't know how they're going to afford a house. They don't know, they're worried about all these reports coming out that say we have 11 years left, right? All that stuff. And you see it. I didn't see that 10 years ago. I see it now. So we're taking it very seriously. Climate change, no matter how you define it, because I have a problem with conservatives and other parties more on that end that try to make it seem as if climate change is not real. Climate change is real, whether it happens naturally or whether we contribute to it, right? So this is happening. Now, I do believe that we are contributing to it in a massive way, and so therefore it's up to us to solve the problem. We can't just say, oh no, we can't control it, so whatever. I would say this. The NDP sees it as an opportunity to bring Canada to a healthier and more prosperous state. So number one of our top things is that we're going to stop fossil fuel subsidies. We're wasting taxpayers' money on a dying industry. Oil will eventually run out. But renewable sources of energy are an incredible new industry that we can develop. So let's put money into that instead. Instead of the Liberals, Trudeau, spending $4.5 billion of our money on a pipeline, how come he didn't open a retraining center? How come he didn't open something that would be a new plant that would build solar panels? Like, that would have been incredible had he made that choice. So the NDP want to make better choices because the rest of the world's doing it. From my family's country of Morocco to all kinds of nations, they're zooming ahead. Germany has gotten rid of coal, right? So we see other countries doing this. So for us, we want to put investment into those new technologies, build new jobs, make sure oil and gas workers, their skills are used because they can be used for cleaner energy. And I would say very importantly that we stand on unceded territories and the Indigenous peoples. They lived here for tens of thousands of years and were able to maintain and build civilizations, but still maintain that stewardship. We've lost that. So the NDP do believe we got to get back to that stewardship idea. So even from our salmon to our farming, Fleetwood is a very mixture of an area. We need to support kind of that clean and healthy growth so that we don't see ourselves continuing down this horrible path where we might not be able to reverse the effects of climate change.
Mm-hmm. And also, Prime Minister Trudeau is saying that if we come back in power, we will plant 2 billion new trees, and that will cost them $3 billion, and it will create 3,500 jobs. But do you think that is enough? And what would you like to add to that?
Yeah. I saw India did that not too long ago, right? They mobilized their people and they did that beautiful thing. So I'm always for planting trees, right? If that's your solution, then you really have run out of ideas, and that scares me as a voter. I would not want to vote for someone that just has that one idea that everybody is doing already, right? So it's not enough. 3,500 jobs is not the solution here, right? Even though we have record employment, it's very precarious. What we're suggesting is we need to structurally change the way our economy is so that we create millions of jobs. Right? That's the reality. We have to build our industries. We have fallen behind. Trudeau's not willing to say that we have fallen behind. So to build those factories, those manufacturing, whatever it is that we need to do, that's going to take time. That's going to take money, yes. But it's going to lead to much better creation. So you know what? I'll stand right by him and plant trees with him. But there must be something else there. And that's been the reality of Trudeau. Like at the end of the day, they're spending money on fossil fuels. There's only so much money. And as a taxpayer, I think of wasting my money. So it's funny when people think the NDP doesn't care about, our debt or taxes. Absolutely we do. We see billions being wasted every day. So by changing that, we actually will have more money to do more things than just plant trees.
Well said. Thank you. And when we talking about Prime Minister Trudeau, he's talking about bringing the cost down of phones. If he has to, he will bring in the competition so he could bring the phone bills down. That is not enough, but it's a start. That's something for middle-class families, middle-class people. At least there is some steps being taken. What would your party will do about this? Yeah.
Where has that promise been in the last 4 years? Because what we've seen is that, unfortunately, he's met with, I forget the number now, hundreds of times with telecom companies, and our bills have gone up and up and up. I myself, I ruined my phone while door knocking in the rain, so I had to get a new one, and the bill that I have to pay now, right, and the new plan is exorbitantly expensive, right? I really can't afford it. Yeah, so, great. I mean, again, this is a problem that we all see because very simply it's this. Australia, America, countries in Europe, they've all capped their costs. Done, right? It's not just about bringing in new competition, which is part of it. It just depends on where you are in the world. The idea is that they've told the companies you cannot overcharge, right? This is going to be the amount. It's an OECD average, basically, and that's where you stop. So as the NDP, absolutely, we're going to do that. That's actually one of our main platform kind of key points, is that would be a massive way to actually put money back into people's pockets every month. Because if I cut your bill in half, right, that's a substantive amount of money that's going to build up over time, right? This idea that conservatives are just like tax cuts, yeah, but that's a one-time deal. That's not exactly going to be, continuing. And the companies will just come up with new ways to charge for this and charge for that. So I guess the short answer is, yeah, of course that's a good idea. And absolutely we will do it. And it's his track record, the Liberal track record, where they haven't gone through these promises, that is a little bit scary. Because he says that now. But what happens on October 22nd? So with the NDP, we're actually going to do it because we do represent working people and we do understand the anger behind that and the fact that money they're spending could be used for, taking a break, right? Paying for medication, there's, paying rent. To be quite honest. This is not just anger about your cell phone bill. This is the fact that you're spending maybe $70 extra that for most people, that could be 10% of their rent, right? That they have to spend every month just on their cell phone bill. So we definitely want to try to cap those costs. I mean, we will cap those costs and be that federal leadership that tells companies, no, not in Canada. You're not going to gouge Canadians anymore.
Thank you. How important is it, NDP, to fund for mental health and disability care?
As a school teacher, I see how mental health really affects the productivity of a person, right? Or disability. And I have incredible friends that are very active in the fight for disability rights because we're a very ableist world. We discriminate often people who are disabled. So number one, we want to put together a real strategy around all kinds of mental health, be it from dementia, right? So more on like senior care kind of side, to actually looking at even when it comes to youth violence and gangs, right? Like what's the element in there of mental health that's causing that crisis as well? BCNDP have a great model. So they set up a ministry, right? Specifically for that. And we've already seen the benefits of doing that. I have to point out my friend Harman Pander, Kulpreet Singh, and their South Asian Mental Health Ambassador Program. Like it's targeted, it's culturally based. So it's not that we're trying to change people or assimilate them. We want to help people find the answers to those issues in their own homes, in their own communities. So we can take that federally. So just as the BC NDP have done it, we can do that federally. But you cannot have equality, human rights, without dealing with mental health and disability issues.
Exactly. When we talk about women's rights, we know we're living in 21st century, but till this day we know that women are not treated equally. Yeah. When it comes to wages, when it comes to colored women, or we're talking about indigenous women. What is, let's say you win, and what would you do to bring equality for women's rights? What would you do?
I can't, I don't remember who said it, but I remember this quote. And it says, you don't debate people's existences, right? You don't debate that. So if you recall one of the last debates, Jagmeet Singh had to step in while everybody else was screaming at each other to tell them, you have no right to talk about a woman's reproductive, choice, right? And Elizabeth May, of course, she of course agreed and was able to speak at that point. So isn't that telling that at our top level, we still have leaders that are not women, that think they have the right to legislate, that say things like, I personally don't believe, but, we're not going to reopen that issue. That's not a good answer. It should be, we're going to fight for women's rights. We're going to actually put into place issues around reproductive justice that actually support women of color, indigenous women. What people sadly don't realize is that even around the issue of abortion, the clinics that we see, they provide a lot of low-income families support for medication, for treatment, for all kinds of things that have nothing to do with being pregnant, right? So there's a lack of understanding there. To be honest, I think we need more women in office because we can provide that lens. If I can share stories of people that I know that have been forced through horrible medical realities and maybe ended up having an abortion, for example, or the case of how women make less. I still have arguments about, but women do make equal amounts. No, they don't. Not even within my own union, right? Yes, the pay grid's the same. But if you go on mat leave, there's a whole bunch of scenarios, little intricate pieces that lower the overall income of a woman, right? Just generally. So we need that nuance. And yes, I do know the Liberals have the gender equity lens. I don't know if that's what it's called, but it's something to that effect. We need to go beyond that. And we need to put people of color, indigenous women in those positions where they get to decide. But at the end of the day, we should not debate a person's existence. And as a woman, that means we need to look at all the facets of being a woman. And I don't like it that I have to run in an election where still I feel that my rights are up for debate. That's a red flag for me. And I do think that, we are the most diverse party in terms of people running. And I feel the NDP would do a much better job of addressing those issues rather than debating over them.
Housing affordability is another issue. A lot of people, common people, cannot afford houses these days. The stress test has affected the housing market big time. What would your party do in terms of mortgage stress test?
Yeah. We're in such a distorted marketplace, right? Housing is a human right, and yet it's being commodified. It's a game. And so most of us are left outside of that game because we just don't have the money to play, right? The stress test, there was a reasoning for it, right? Let's be clear, because things were getting so out of whack. And if you look at the United States, where they had a massive economic crash because homes were just kind of being doled out like candy and there was no responsibility. So I can understand why that was considered a tool to be used. Now, couple years on, the NDP do believe we need to revisit the stress test. Is it something we still need? How is it impacting? Because I've been hearing, absolutely, from builders, from certain folks, that it is a major cause of concern. So the NDP definitely want to revisit that. We do believe in raising the amortization rate to 30 years, the mortgages, right? So I think that's what a lot of different parties are saying, to be honest. We agree with that as well. 25, we should really have it at 30 years, and that would really give some breathing room to families. I think there are other issues beyond that, obviously. And as long as Canadians have to pay 30 to 50% of their income on housing, that puts them in poverty. Bottom line. And that's not fair when housing is supposed to be a human right.
Pharmaceutical companies are making billions and billions of dollars. And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has promised that if their party forms the government, they will give free dental care, free pharma care. So what would you like to add to that? What do you feel about that? Do we have the funds to accommodate these new services?
So let me get to costing right away. There's no bones about it. We want to put in a super wealth tax. So if you have over $20 million in assets, then we are looking towards putting 1% increase. Now, and let me add, to close tax evasion. I've seen numerous reports now, anywhere from 40 billion to 240 billion, so I don't know what the right answer is there, but billions of dollars are being evaded. People are putting their money offshore. So there are billions of dollars waiting to be brought back by a federal government that's willing to point out the criminality of that. How dare you not pay your taxes, right? When you and I, if we don't pay our taxes, we're in trouble. So we have mechanisms, specifically the wealth tax, based on estimates that we've seen from people that have done the math, around $70 billion. So that would absolutely help put in place the pharmacare you speak of. I think bottom line, though, there's money to be had on the other end. What I mean by that is I have friends and family that can't go to work because they have issues with their teeth, right? Whether it's mental health, whether it's the cost of medication, they'll stay home and be sicker, or go to work sick, make other people sick, not work as much. Absolutely. So productivity is huge here. And we have this proven. Our universal healthcare system is the reason why we have such a strong car industry. Because in the States, it costs more money to make those cars because they don't provide the coverage for their workers. So I would say that a healthier Canada would be more productive from the get-go. So it's a good investment, right? Just like you go to the hospital when you're sick and it might cost you some money. The bottom line is you don't think about that money at that second because you want to get better. So right now we do have a sick population in the sense that, when they're ill, they can't always afford the medication. And I mean, look, right? You're right. Pharmaceutical companies are making billions. They have lied to us about opioids, and that's been taken to court, and people are winning those cases. So you have people now addicted to fentanyl and other, Vicodin, Oxycontin, a whole host of medications. And that was just because they're trying to deal with pain. And because they can't deal with pain properly, because they can't afford something else, they're going to other means. So how many billions is that costing us in terms of reacting to fentanyl overdoses, reacting to people that just go to the emergency room, right? And now we have an overtaxed system, right? We have doctors falling apart, people in the hallways, even Surrey Memorial is full, and it was just built, right? So, and we need another hospital. So the reality is that the costs are so much higher right now than they need to be. Pharmacare, if you give it time, will actually reduce those costs and actually will be cheaper in the long run than the current system we have now.
I think that's all we have time for now. But what would you like to say in closing?
I hope really that people vote for good policy. I think every riding there's an idea of who was here before and what the idea is. I want people to be really careful about the words they hear. So I know tax cuts can sound so great to one's ear, but as a teacher I can tell you, and as a citizen of Surrey, when I have seen tax cuts, they've slashed social services. And now here we are in massive problems. I also need to make it clear that the Liberals have been throwing a lot of money around, but but they have broken promises. And I don't know if they're going to do any better in the next 4 years. So don't believe when the media says, you know, we're the other party, literally, right? People are choosing the other party. Well, I'm proud to be another. Let's just reclaim that and say that, you know, we have even 6 parties, right, in Bloc Québécois, right? I think no matter where you stand, we need to support all the groups that are running, and at the same time make sure that the NDP, as that third kind of major party, is given its due time, and that people don't just go, well, you know, all I'm hearing is conservative liberal. Think about the working class people running for the NDP. We're not the politicians. We're not these big business people that just kind of can pay for everything. We're you. And we need people's support in Fleetwood, Kells, and everywhere to actually get into power. If people come together, we can make the change. If you wait for the Liberals and Conservatives to do that, their track record speaks for itself. They don't do it. So I hope you choose me on October 21st. I hope you choose NDP candidates. And if anything, my track record shows I work with everybody. So after Election Day, whatever that means to bring forward the voice of Fleetwood, Kells, I will do that for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Yes. I know you're a busy person right now, but you give us a good time. Thank you so much. So friends, ਮੇਰਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਮਾਈਂਡ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕਿਸ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਉਮੀਦਵਾਰ, ਕਿਸ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣਾ ਉਮੀਦਵਾਰ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੀਆਂ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੀਆਂ ਜੋ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਣ। ਅਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਾਪਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਤੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਰੱਬ ਰਾਖਾ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।